morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on this Wednesday edition of Ask the Theologian. Glad you're here. Hey, on Wednesdays, you know what we do. We study the Gospel of Mark about 10 after 6 Mountain Time. Look forward to seeing you for that if you can join us live or on the archive. We have been having some fun along with that coming in, and it has been a blessing. Hope you'll join us. And let's see. I was trying to check here. What are we at? We're a whole bunch of sessions in. How's that? Session. Well, I don't know. 30, 31, 32. We're in there. So hey, come join us tonight if you want, or start it and binge watch it. We'll have fun with that and be excellent and a fun time together. But here we are for Ask the Theologian. Hey, did you notice the shorts? Not the short pants, but the short videos. I did one yesterday. I did one today. Brent just put up there a moment ago. Check those out on YouTube. I just sent Nathan a little word too. Say, hey, we need shorts on Worshipify. But here we are, starting with our favorite Jamaican. We go down to Mark in Aruba. And the question that came in yesterday, who is your favorite dispensational author? That's a hard question, Mark. I mean, it's almost an unfair question, all right? I don't know. I would have to say my favorites are all dead. I like dead authors. I want their stuff to be vetted out through and through. So who's my favorite? You know, I would have to say Clarence Larkin has a tremendous ability to draw pictures. The Clarence Larkin graphics are my favorite. But let me add, I just look at the pictures. I have read some of the material he's got in do I have it nearby? I don't. It's over there. The greatest book on dispensational truth ever written. But that, by the way, he didn't put the name on that. That was added later. Some of it I've read, and, you know, it's good stuff. But his pictures, A1. Clarence Larkin, Dispensational Truth. It's a book that everybody ought to have. I don't sell it because the family still has the copyright and they sell it. And they don't sell to wholesalers. So, you know, I would just lose. I'd have to charge you more or I would lose money. So, but anyway, check that book out. And then, you know, I like F.W. Grant. Not a lot of people read F.W. Grant. F.W. Grant is dead for a long time now. F.W. Grant is hard to read. This is the challenge. It's why I haven't sold a lot of his books or reproduced a lot of his books. You know, now what I'm kind of thinking, I don't know if this is fair or not. I would have full disclosure. But what I'm kind of thinking is take some of F.W. Grant's work, send it through AI to simplify it just a little bit, reword it, because he is one of these, wrote in the 1800s, and he's one of these that has sentences that are 2 pages. Gets very difficult to put through. But man, he's got some brilliant stuff in there. I mean, it's like gold mining. You have to pan through a lot of stuff to get to it. But when you get to it, man, that was worth every penny of it. F.W. Grant. He's got a work out there called the Numerical Bible. I've only used it online. What I like about the Numerical Bible, he goes through, he never finished, he died. He goes through the Bible, and his premise was that all of the Bible has the pattern, just like the Psalms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 especially. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, that there is that pattern. And so he goes through the Torah, the Psalms, a number of places, and he looks at that and he analyzes that, and then he has some commentary with it. Really good exegetical stuff. Let me just say, top shelf kind of stuff. I don't mean to say that in an arrogant way, but you got to work. I've got to work to look at it and understand it and try to figure out what that says. But I like F.W. Grant. Of course, I like Bullinger. His stuff is not easy to read either. But I'm probably gonna go with those three in my top, in the top category there. How's that? And carry that out. Now I notice this did have a little bit of tease in the comments section by a dispensational writer. But I should tell you to go to dispensationalpublishing.com, hit the blog button, and because Pastor Bays said, do articles count? Well, of course they count. I love Randy White's stuff. That's not what he was expecting. Shields and Arrows. Mark does some writing for us here. Like, here's his newest right here, Understanding the Context of Faith. Faith was and is essential. What types of faith are found in the Bible? The issue with assumptions. Wonder where he learned that from. The connection of faith and obedience. Different faith had different types of obedience. Yeah, go in there and check that out. Some pretty good stuff. Thanks, Mark. That is always such a hard question. You know, let me say one thing just a little bit differently. Some of my favorite dispensational authors are Jewish rabbis, old, ancient Jewish rabbis that would never, they don't even call themselves Christian, they're not. But there's something about the way that the Jewish rabbis often wrote, and sometimes you'll get into some newer ones. For example, we carry this series of commentaries written from an Orthodox Jewish perspective. I happen to have the one on Genesis right here by Rabbi Zvi Grumet. These are modern, but he writes he sort of takes the ancient sages and puts that into something that we can read here. The reason I say they write dispensationally is because they do not make the mistake, and I will call it a mistake, they do not make the mistake of interpreting the Old Testament based upon the foundation of the New Testament. That's backwards. You're supposed to interpret the Greek scriptures, as we probably should better call them, in light of the Hebrew scriptures. But Christians and non-dispensationalists do just the opposite. And a lot of dispensationalists, they always want to make a beeline to the cross. Well, the Jewish writers don't make a beeline to the cross, as you can imagine. And strangely enough, that really helps me to understand, oh, so that's what that Old Testament passage was about. Without all of what is sometimes garbage, every now and then it's right, but what is sometimes garbage of the filter that has gone through 2,000 years of Catholicism and Reformed theology before it ever got to me in Christianity. And so they take out all of those assumptions and sort of strip it down and help me to deal with it in a different way. I don't agree with all of them, but I don't agree with F.W. Grant or E.W. Bullinger on everything, or Clarence Larkin for that matter. So those Jewish authors really can be good. Now, they're not always easy to read either, especially the ancient sages, because they skip things that were well known then, but now we don't know, and so there's some assumptions there that aren't there, and so it becomes a tad difficult. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you being there. Yeah, Toby says Larkin's charts are amazing, and I completely would agree with that. But Davey, you're absolutely right. Larkin, and maybe to some degree, though you won't find it much, F.W. Grant would probably be considered Acts 2 as well, but I always read his Old Testament stuff, and it doesn't come through there. So, hey, I noticed a couple of nice comments about the tie today. The shirt is, I don't know, kind of lavender. I don't know. And the tie, this is I think our cotton candy cloud tie. It's a little silver with little dots in there. Sort of looks like an albino trout. I thought about wearing the purple. No, I decided that's way too girly. So I went with the white. But thanks there. Edith in Missouri. How should the phrase, the sons of God, be interpreted? We had a sons of God question yesterday in a little bit different light. The context of the Old Testament seems to be negative, while the context of the New Testament seems to be positive. I would say that is partially true. And I would say this is probably one of those occasions in which we may have to separate the Hebrew from the Greek. Let's start out, of course, Genesis chapter 6 is the easiest first place to start out. As we have in verse 2, the sons of God saw the daughters of men. And then let's open up anew, and is it in Job chapter 1? I don't think it is. Job chapter, maybe it is. Let's go down to chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And I'm going to put, and Satan came also among them. Now, what I was trying to question, you said, the context in the Old Testament seems to be negative. I'm not sure, certainly in Genesis 6 that's negative. Is it so negative here, or is it general? The reason I highlighted the word also is that Satan is separated from them to some degree, or included among them, but they want to, the author wants to make sure that there is an emphasis on Satan. Now, I tell you what, I am going to pull up the evangelical software here for just a moment and see. I want to do a fuller search on this. Nathan's working on this for Biblify one of these days. I guess he's only one person. I've tried to get him to be 6, so I don't know what the problem is there. But let's do a search of the Hebrew term B'nai Elohim, sons of God, and see where we've got it here. Mostly, I'm trying to pop this up where you can see it here. Yeah, okay. B'nai Elohim, whether it's translated sons of God or not, here's what we've got. Genesis 6:2 and 6:4. Job 1:6, we've already looked at those. Job 2:1, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Same context. Now, it's interesting, Job 5:1, call now if there be any that answer thee, and to which of the saints wilt thou turn? This is one of, I don't use this argument as much, but this is one of the arguments that I use for saints in the New Testament, is that in the Old Testament, it is always either angels, as it is here, or Israel, never anything else. It's angels or it's Israel. Get into the New Testament, why don't you just carry that forth? The people who are familiar with the writers of the New Testament, that they're familiar with the Old Testament scriptures, so they would come in saying this is saints or this is Israel, and it's not. Excuse me. This is angels or it's Israel, and it's not angels. So this is Israel. I don't know. I may have said that wrong earlier. My mind is telling me, hey, mate, you might have said that. But saints are either angels or Israel. So here we have it in 5:1. Saints, again, it's angels, just like we've had before. Behold, he putteth no trust in his saints. Yea, the heavens are not clean in his sight. We would want to check the context of that. But yeah, that's in a negative light. His troops come together and raise up their way against me and encamp around about my tabernacle. We would want to know who's talking here. But that, I guess you would call that in a negative light, whoever is doing it. Is there any number of his armies, and upon whom doth not his light arise? You might be able to argue that's positive, saying, hey, wow, the armies of the Lord, they go on. The B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, they're powerful. 38:7, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. This is a creation passage. I'd say that's kind of positive. And then we get into the Psalms. Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Now, if I were exegeting that passage in Psalm 29:1, I would say the mighty are not like David and Solomon. The mighty are his angels here. Now, could you look in there and say, sons of God, there is used in a more New Testament sense where, the redeemed become the sons of God? Could you say the mighty, Psalm 29:1, is that a reference to Israel? Well, we'd have to look at that and see. And again, in Psalm 29:2, you go to Psalm 82. God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. Now, notice the gods there is also B'nai Elohim. To exegete this passage, you would have to say God in the midst of the angels judges the fallen angels is certainly a legitimate interpretation of that, probably the best interpretation of that. But there, I guess you'd say, yeah, that's kind of negative. Well, half of it's negative, half is positive. He stands in the congregation of the mighty and judgeth among the gods. And sometimes used in a little different ways here as justice. Let's take a Psalm 89:5. The heavens shall praise thy wonders, O Lord, thy faithfulness also in the congregation of the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, the saints. Now, once again, is that talking about Israel or is that talking about angels? Without going further, we would have to say, I don't know. It could be talking about either one. But it is more positive there. Let's look at the last one, Psalm 89:7. God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the B'nai Elohim, and to be had reverence of all them that are about him. Again, I would say that's largely more positive. Which way do you put it? Let's go with largely more positive. So I want to question your assumption on this a little bit. The context in the Old Testament seems to be negative. Now, what would happen, however, if you didn't look up B'nai Elohim, but you looked up sons of God? In all of the Bible, just pulled up this search. Genesis, Job 38:7, the morning stars sang together, the sons of God shouted for joy. That's probably a positive. The rest, well, let's go negative, neutral. The reason I want to put Job 1 and 2 as neutral is because it looks like it includes the whole host of the whole heavenly host. Good, bad, whatever, they come together. 38:7 seems to be positive, so we got two negatives, two neutral, and a positive. That leads us still to the negative side. And that's all you've got of translated B'nai Elohim in the Old Testament. Now we come to the New Testament, and sons of God obviously is not in Hebrew, it's going to be in Greek. John 1:12, as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. Yesterday we mentioned the doctrine that some hold, like David Reed, that that the body of Christ is going to replace. I've heard his argument before, but it's been too long for me to recall the details of it. Is this one of the areas in which you've got some of that detail? Maybe, maybe not. But sons of God certainly used differently here, used more like saints. As many, Romans 8:14, as many as are led by the Spirit, they are the sons of God, certainly positive. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. Now, I take this sons of God to be Israel here, the manifestation. This is what we're looking for, is when they come forward. That ye may be, Philippians, that you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights unto the world. Now, I'll have to go back to my Philippians study, see if I put that in blue or green or what I did there. But it's certainly a positive light. And then 1 John, what manner of love hath the Father bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Beloved, now we are the sons of God. You know what would be very interesting? You've got 2 Romans and a Philemon passage. Could it follow through? I said earlier in this very broadcast, I said that the New Testament takes a little bit different view of the sons of God. What if it doesn't? What if I was wrong? What if we question the assumptions? And we say in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, sons of God, B'nai Elohim, was either angels or Israel. What if we carry that to the Greek Scriptures of the New Testament and say sons of God are either angels or Israel, and we're not sons of God? Just like we're not saints. Could it work? Don't go from here and saying, Randy says we're not sons of God. I'm saying, hey, that's worth digging into. And if it could be proven, it would strengthen my argument on the saints. Always looking for strengthening that argument on the saints. But, I don't know that would come true. Especially the Philippians passage, I would say, is the one that goes against it. And let me say, I've said this a lot of times, but let me just remind you that when you have an assumption, what you should do is look for things that deny that assumption. Don't look for things that confirm that assumption. Look for things that deny that assumption. Let me give you an example. I have lived. Let me see. I don't know if this will work. I'm going to ask AI if I was born May 4th, not 24th. Excuse me, 24th, 1965. How many days have I lived? I'm going to show you an example. Okay, it says, AI, that I have lived for 21,395 days. Hey, 5 days from now, it's going to be 21,400. We should have a cake or something. But anyway, so let me say, my assumption is that I am immortal. I will never die. You say, Randy, you should question that assumption. Well, I have been questioning that assumption. I have tested this out over and over and over again. Well, how many tests have you done? I have tested it for 21,395 days. How many thousands of days do I have to, how many tens of thousands of days do I have to test this out in order to prove to you that I'm not going to die? I'm immortal. Now, there, I'm taking one bit of evidence and using it as kind of a confirmation bias. I need to broaden my horizon a little bit. Is 21,395 enough days? Probably you could double that. What, 42,000, and let's call it 800. How many people have lived 42,800 days in the last 200 years? Nobody. So I want to avoid confirmation bias. Now, all of that to say, if I was doing the study, and I might someday, if I was doing the study trying to, with the assumption, every assumption is legit, it just may be knocked out of the water, in which case we're going to let it go. But take care, don't be afraid of an assumption. Just test it. So the assumption, I go into the Bible study, I say, okay, I want to assume that sons of God always means either angels or Israel, one or the other. I've gone through the Old Testament, it's always angels or Israel. Okay, is there anything that goes against it in the Bible? That's where that's my scope of study. And I might say, okay, Philippians 2:15 is probably the easiest. Why not start there? If someone can prove that Philippians 2:15, sons of God, is not one of those two things, then there's a third option. There's something else that has come about it. Okay, there you go. But if there is a third option, then I have to drop my assumption. Period. And I've dropped a lot of assumptions even through study. There are some things I really, really, really wanted to work, and they didn't when I worked them out. So you drop them. Okay, so the context in the Old Testament either seem to be negative, while the context in the New Testament seem to be positive. I would agree that all the New Testament ones do seem to be positive, and that if you just use the English sons of God, they are negative in the Old Testament. But if you broaden that out to B'nai Elohim, then it's a little bit of a draw there. So I'm not sure we can come to the conclusion yet. How's that? I'm not sure we can come to the conclusion yet on that. But that is really worth some great study. Thanks, Edith in Missouri, for one that we've got to dig in a little bit further. Now, let's see. Okay, Gerard says, B'nai Ha-Elohim in the Hebrew Tanakh always refers to Ha-Malakim, the messengers, the angels. And if we were to put, I think the difference that we've got here is that, one is, I want to make sure the ha, the definite article, that there's no difference between what I've been saying, B'nai Elohim, and what Gerard says, B'nai Ha-Elohim. Are there B'nai Elohims that don't have B'nai Ha-Elohim? That ha could make a big difference? Are there some of those? Maybe so. But I think let's just assume that those are all the same for just a moment. I think that a pretty strong argument could be made, and I haven't done the study, so I won't definitively make the argument, but let's go back to that screen. A pretty strong argument could be made that, for example, in Psalm 29:1, give unto the Lord, O ye mighty, give unto the Lord glory and strength, that is referring to the angels. I tell you what, let's just pull up Psalm 29. Could we, again, our assumption given to us by Gerard is it is always angels. Could we look at Psalm 29 and say, no, these are not angels. These are maybe Jews. Let's look. Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty, give unto the Lord glory and strength. There we don't know. Although I might say in context, we might immediately go to Israel, but we wouldn't have to. And we might be wrong in doing it. So angels could definitely work here. Give unto the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The glory of the God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaketh the cedars. Yea, the Lord breaketh the cedars. He also makes them, the cedars, to skip like a calf. Lebanon and Syrian are like a young unicorn. What I'm looking here is there anything that says this is not angels? The one thing that might show it as not angels, we haven't found it yet. But if he says, if it says something like, he split the waters of the Red Sea for us, that would probably lean you to say no. But so far we haven't found it. Shakes the wilderness. Again, I don't think that proves anything. Makes the hinds to calve, discover the forest, sitteth upon the flood, the Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his. I don't think you could say that to say, yep, it's about his people, any more than you could say, yep, it's about floods. This is the strength of the Lord here. So you may be right that we can't put those two things on there. We can only put one. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Joel up in Grand Rapids, Michigan has a stronger assumption of immortality than I do. He's tested this out for 26,305 days. Missed your cake by 5 days. Now, a related question. Stephen in Winston-Salem. Are women the sons of God too? If we are to take, there's so many trails you can take on this one. If we take B'nai Elohim to only be angels, that would strengthen the argument that there are no female angels. All angels are male. Until you get to the New Testament and take sons of God, which is huios theos, something like that, I believe. It's a different language. In the switching of the language, have we moved? I mean, I think clearly you would have to say we have moved in the switching of the language. Because by the time you get to these New Testament passages over here, these, let's take John, which is talking about Israel, that we should be called the sons of God. I think he would include people like Anna and Elizabeth and Mary to be the sons of God. So in the New Testament sense, I think we would have to say yes. In the Old Testament sense, it depends on if we broaden it to Israel. I guess it's good news here. I kind of like it when grammar answers the question. Here it doesn't. So what I was going to say is the good news here for the ladies is that both Hebrew and Greek default towards the masculine. When there is a crowd of people, it's used in the masculine. So the masculine doesn't necessarily always mean there's no women involved. Very good. Next question of the day comes from John Doe or Jane Doe. Can we assume in Acts, when Paul goes into the synagogue, that everyone in the synagogue is a law-keeping Jew? I'm going to stop right there. Some more comments here. I don't think so. If it's the temple, yes. Because only law-keeping Jews are allowed beyond the the court of the Gentiles, the court of the women, into the temple itself, into the holy place where only the Levites are allowed. So there are various places that you can go by the location on that. But the synagogue is different. A synagogue is just it's almost like ecclesia. It's a gathering of people. And it's a gathering of people that really was only used as in the sense of this is where Jewish people gather. But there was not the prohibition that Gentiles cannot enter into the temple. As a matter of fact, I suspect they would, at least to a degree, welcome Gentiles who wanted to come and learn. The synagogue was a place of study, was and is, I would say. Anybody can go to a synagogue today. You could go down, call the local synagogue if you want to do it. I would suggest probably, if you really want a good Jewish experience, do the Chabad or the more Orthodox. If you want a more comfortable but very good experience, call the conservative cemetery, the conservative synagogue in your. If you live in a large town, there probably is one, and maybe a small town. They'd let you in. They'd let you come listen, participate, sing. A lot of it's going to be in Hebrew. You might not understand, but the good bit of it's going to be in English. You would understand it, and you'd say, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I like the way they do that. Oh, I don't like the way they, this makes me feel at home. This makes me not feel at home." Just like if you were to come to, any strange gathering. So the answer would be no. We cannot assume that it was just law-keeping Jews. Now, the flip side of that, we could probably assume that these are people that have some degree of interest in the Torah, the Tanakh, the Jewish scriptures, the Jewish ways, the Jewish thoughts, the Jewish Messiah, that they are inquirers. They might be the God-fearing, that's Gentiles who say, yeah, I like the way this is going. I just haven't converted to Judaism. I can't keep the law because I'm not a Jew, but hey, I'm certainly progressing that way. And even today, if you wanted to become a member of the Hasidic synagogue or even the conservative synagogue, it would take several years for you to do it. So might be some of those that are in the process of conversion. There might be some of those that are just at the very beginning of inquiry. It could be any. But I think it's safe to assume that most are interested in Jewish things. Probably very few just total skeptics there. I don't care anything about the Jewish religion. I just needed a warm place to stay today. Probably very few of that. Now, the question goes on. I thought non-Jews or Gentiles could also enter the synagogue. You're right. Or is that something that occurred later in time, not the first century? As far as I know, I know of nothing that says as long as there have been synagogues, everybody has been allowed to come in the synagogue. There may be things that are only for, let's say, the members, but I think that's going to be very rare. It's almost like if you are a member of, let's say, a Baptist church, you can participate virtually everything, but you might find one that says the Lord's Supper is only for believers, or wouldn't be too uncommon to see that. More rare, but you'd find them, is the Lord's Supper is only for those who are members of our local congregation. So you're not invited to that one. Probably the biggest thing you'd find if you went into a Baptist church that a non-member would not be allowed to fully participate in would be the business meeting. We only let the members vote. Outside of that, you can sit there, you can listen, you can even comment, all that. So I think that's the way the first century synagogue is going to be. I know of nothing that would show that to be otherwise. And the question goes on to say, I know everyone had to obey the law to be in the temple, but is this true of the synagogues as well? Okay, yeah. So your assumption was right there, as far as I know. Again, I don't think there's anything in the scripture that we would find that would say the synagogue did not allow the Jews. The temple did not allow the Gentiles. The temple did not allow it, but the Jews did. Now, again, I would take my assumption, you are at the synagogue. That's the gathering place for Jews. You're going to have, who knows, 90, 95% Jewish people, and the other 5% are going to be people interested in Judaism and Jewish things. Sort of a stab at that. Thank you. And another anonymous question. I had assumed that all uses of Helen in Greek referred to Hellenistic Jews, Grecian Jews. That's not a safe assumption, as the question goes on. But upon closer look, like Romans 3:9, it seems I'd better not assume that. Is there any way to know whether it's a reference to Greek Jews or uncircumcised Gentiles when the context doesn't provide enough evidence? Unfortunately, I don't think so. So let's look at Romans chapter 3, verse 9, where it says, what then are we the Jews better than they? No, in no wise, for we have proved that both Jews and Gentiles, Helen, that they are all under sin. Now, I think this is correctly marked in the context of Romans chapter 3 about circumcised and uncircumcised, Jews and Gentiles. The word being Helen. But there are other Helen or Hellenistic, Hellenista words in the Greek where you say, oh, that's clearly Jews, Acts chapter 6. The sad word is there's not a grammatical marker that definitely points this out. But I would say that's the same with the word Jew also. Because the word Jew is our later understanding. The word Jew for us means one of the circumcised, the religion of the Jews. But sometimes it's actually just the Judeans, those who live in Judea, as opposed to Jews who live somewhere else. The writer of the Gospel of John does that sometimes with the Jews, the Judeans. Paul, I think, does it sometimes. So I wish there was something other than context, because sometimes context is very difficult to do on this. But this is, you remember our series, Words That Must Make You Pause? I don't know if I've got that on Worshipify or not, because it's a little bit of an old one. No, I don't. So if you go to Randy White Ministries, I'm pretty sure on this one you're going to have to click the old website right there. And then I would just do a Command F and put the word pause. And it's pause. Oops, you got to spell it right. Pause. And it's there somewhere. It shows one of one, but it's not leading me to it. Let me back up here. P-A-U-S-E. There it is, right there. Words that must make you pause. Now, if you click on that one, and I don't have those. There's 3 sessions. You'd have to go through because there's a number of words in each session. And one of those is Jew and Gentile. I think it's really like, it's like that. Every time you're going to have to pause, unfortunately. Some of them, like Romans chapter 3, is a little bit easier because in the context it almost shouts it out. But all of those others, I'm afraid you're going to have to let it pause. Dan, Dan, the dandy one, thank you. This is possibly true, and thanks for pointing it out. I think you've made a straw man on David Reed's the replacement idea, not replacement theology, but the replacement idea. So this would solve the problem. What the dandy one says, this would solve the problem that I brought up yesterday. If we, the body of Christ, replace, as Dan says, their positions, that's different than me, Randy White, part of the body of Christ, replace that fallen angel's seat. So, rather than, let's say, we've got 100 members in the United States Senate. And we say, well, the Senate's rather worthless, hasn't done anything good for decades. Let's replace them. We could replace them with 100 individuals. Mitch, you're out of there. Chuck, you're out of there. And we replace them with, Peter, Paul, and Mary, whatever. For that, you have to have exactly 100. That's what I was saying yesterday. But the dandy one brings out a very good point. We could replace the Senate with I'll just grab another word, with the Parliament. Let me say that a little different. We could replace the Senate with the House of Lords. Well, the House of Lords might have 200 people in it, but it's still a replacement. So excellent. My apologies for creating the straw man. The only defense I have for myself is I did say that I'm not fully versed in his theory. And I said he's always got good theories. So there we go. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, Nancy says the Independent Baptist Church I grew up in did not allow non-members to participate in the Lord's Supper. It used to be much more common than it is now. Today, not nearly as common. Okay, let's see. Jay in Tennessee has a question about Matthew chapter 16, verses 15 through 18. Verse 18 especially. The rock. Is this rock Peter, or is it the statement that Peter made in verse 16? Whom say ye that I am? Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. There's the statement. Jesus answered, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah. Flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father in heaven. Thou art Peter. Upon this rock I will build my church. This has been a matter of contention probably ever since the Catholic Church built themselves on the primacy of Peter and upon Peter being the first pope. Because if this rock is Peter, then the Catholics are right. And let me just say, I'll venture out there, if the Catholics are right, let's become Catholic. Why not? There are maybe three ways we could go with it. One, we could say the Catholics are right. The church is built upon Peter, and we should become Catholic. Two, we could say Peter is the rock. You're right. The Catholics are right. But my church is not the body of Christ. I'm going to go ahead and put that in a different color. And therefore, we shouldn't join the Catholics, because even though it's Peter, my church, my assembly is Israel. Israel built upon the primacy of Peter, not the Catholic Church. Therefore, I'm not going to join the Catholic Church. There's two ways we could go with it. Here's a third way we could go with it. It's not Peter. That thou art Peter, and upon this rock here is going to be something other than Peter. You know, figuring out this rock is, to some degree, here I've got them the same color. But again, what if they're not the same color? What if you've got Peter, and you've got a rock, and you've got a church? And you have to figure out all three of them. The easiest one to figure out is who Peter is. I got him. So now I need to figure out the rock and the church. I'm going to say, by the way, that the church is definitely not us. The church, the body of Christ, was not envisioned, foreshadowed, traceable in any way in the ministry of Jesus, who is a minister of the circumcision. So I'm definitely going to say, even if the Catholics got it right that Peter is the rock, we don't have to join their church. So I would take church here. It's got to be Israel, the assembly that he will put together. You've seen our chart before. I won't pull it up right now, on the various kinds of ecclesia in the New Testament. It comes from our book, The Church Graphically Presented. The church that Jesus is going to build, I will build my church, is the assembly of Israel, the congregation, as it was often called in the Psalms. And it is going to be built upon this rock. Now, if you take that view, can I just say it a little bit bluntly, doesn't matter whether Peter's the rock or the confession is the rock. It doesn't matter for us. It's a theological matter of interest, but it doesn't affect us because we're not in that church anyway. We're not in that ecclesia. We're not in that assembly. Now, grammatically, I probably would lean to he's not talking about Peter. And I've argued this before, but I argued it from the standpoint of I've desperately got to get that rock not to be Peter, because I would have to join the Catholic Church otherwise. If my church is this thing that we're in, and it's built on Peter, you got to become Catholic. Now, you might reform the Catholic Church once you're in there, and I would, starting with the Pope. Calls himself the Vicar of Christ. Huh. And I'm a monkey's uncle. But, I never thought it would be a good question to say, is the Pope Catholic? But this guy, he's not even Catholic. He's a socialist, leftist, progressive loon. I would predict the next Pope will be better. Predictions are awfully hard, especially when they're about the future. But I would predict the next Pope will be better. But now, I wouldn't spend so much time arguing, Peter is this rock. I would spend more time arguing, I'm not in this church anyway. So, is the future assembly of Israel built upon Peter? Well, maybe so. I mean, he was given the keys to the kingdom. Pretty decent argument to be made there. I think there is kind of a primacy of Peter that you see. That seems like it has to come out somewhere. So when you get the 12 apostles sitting on their thrones, who's going to be the chief justice? There's only one guy really you could vote for. That'd be Peter. So maybe Peter is the rock, even though grammatically, you all have heard this argument before. You've got, Petros versus Petra, the pebble versus the stone. But I'm not sure that definitively knocks out Peter as much as we would like it to. I think there's a sense in which Jesus could be saying, you're just a little pebble now, but someday you're going to be a rock. There's the possibility of reading that, and it's a legitimate possibility. But again, I probably would argue this rock is, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. But let me say, grammatically, that's probably a harder argument to build. That's more of a theological argument than it is a grammatical argument, and I like to start with grammar. So, if you ever get pressed on it, well, let me say this. If I was in a debate, in a debate, you want to be very precise in your answers because they're going to catch you on it. I wish there was more sense of a debate in our Christian world. They're going to catch you on it. They're going to stop you on it. So if I were in a debate, I probably would not argue this rock. I certainly would not definitively argue this rock is the confession, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Because the only way I can build or defend that argument is to say, because I don't like the other one. Because, that's why. I have a doctorate, that's why. Well, that's a lame argument. I got to have something grammatically to go on. And maybe I can argue, well, grammatically, Petros is not Petra. But how can I argue that Petra is the confession? I don't have anything to go on there. So again, if it's me and you, Jay, I'd have a burger for lunch. I'm gonna go with, this rock is the confession. But if we're gonna deal with it in a robust way, which is what we want to do, then I think we got to go with let's be a little careful with what we go with there. How's that? Let's be a little careful with what we go with there, and do it that way. Thanks, Jay, in Tennessee. One more comment here that comes from Gerard about the B'nai Elohim regarding the sons of God. Ben or B'nai, just depends on what it attaches to there, is the masculine singular. While masculine singular, Ben Elohim, B'nai is the plural. Either one masculine. But feminine, Bat Elohim or Benot Elohim. Now, Gerard does say this should answer the issue. However, you still have to deal with the fact that you could find plenty of masculine nouns referring to a collective which within it has females. I suspect let's look for. I'm looking for an example. Let me see if Psalm 1 will help us out. Yeah. Well, in this case, it's actually a little bit different. I'll have to do some work, but nor sinners in the congregation. Congregation is the word I was looking for. But in that case, congregation is feminine. But it doesn't answer the issue. Would you say, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous? See, it's all the ladies. The ladies, they are the sinners. Ha ha, women! The congregation of the sinners is only women. You wouldn't responsibly make that argument. At the men's supper, you might, but when the women are present, you wouldn't responsibly make that argument, grammatically. So you got this issue that, in fact, here, I think this is a decent way to put it. Masculine and feminine in humanity has to do with biology. But masculine and feminine in grammar is unrelated to biology. It could have been, and maybe it would have been kind of nice if it was, it could have been Class A and Class B. You got Class A nouns and you got Class B nouns, A or B. And then we wouldn't say, oh, see, it's all girls or it's all boys. It's a grammar thing that often is completely unrelated. So the bin versus the bat, I don't think that does answer the issue, because I think grammatically it's unrelated to the biology of the congregation. There we go. Helen, dear William, Manny, did I catch that question? I don't think I did. I got to save you for tomorrow. My apologies. Thanks again for being here with us. And let's see. I was just going to check here. We've got now 2 shorts on YouTube. That one. I know a lot of you don't do that. But, look here, just in a day, this is my, what do you call this, content screen. Yesterday, I did the Cain and Abel born in the Garden of Eden. 856 views in 24 hours. That's a lot more than the full videos will get. That's why I'm doing them, because they get out there. So, a lot more. So that's kind of nice. 7 comments. That's pretty strong on the comments. I noticed not all the comments were agreeable. A lot of you all, you agree. Not there. I think that's a good thing. I like a little debate. Now, here's what's very interesting. 60% likes. You can't see this on your side, but I can see it on my side. 42 likes, 28 dislikes. I like that. That means it was engaging with some people. They felt strong enough about it to push the button. So go ahead and put like. But what that tells me is that's getting outside of the box, where our outside of the bubble, let's call it, outside of our bubble. So that's good. So the other one I put up just a little bit ago has 4 views on it so far, and 100% likes. So thank you there. But that'll change. We'll check that out. Okay, thanks. By the way, this is day number 2 from the eclipse. Day number 2, and thus far. The world is still operational. Just wanted to keep tabs of that and put that. Let's see, eastward, I just noticed your question there, and it didn't come over to my side. If you'll put the word question in first, but I'm going to take that question. I'm going to make sure we get it tomorrow. Put the word question, and that will come about. So thanks there, Eastward. We'll get you to tomorrow, and the rest of you. So good to see all of you tonight, 6 p.m., 10 after 6 Mountain Time. We'll have our study of the Gospel of Mark, and hope you will maybe click a like on this video, a subscribe if you're on YouTube. And on Worshipify, you don't have to do anything. Just sit home and smile and say, I did it, and I did not support that other place. God bless. Thanks for being with us. We'll We'll see you soon. Randy at Randy White Ministries. God bless you.